Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal after what was supposed to be a peaceful and rejuvenating summer retreat in Japan. Legendary soap opera actress Nancy Lee Grahn found herself thrust into a surreal nightmare, not by the forces of nature alone, but by a calculated smear campaign that rippled across the digital world like a virus. What began as a moment of vulnerability, where she and her daughter faced one of the most terrifying natural disasters in recent Japanese history, quickly spiraled into a media spectacle built on lies, envy, and betrayal. Just days after surviving a massive earthquake and the ensuing tsunami threat that left parts of Tokyo and coastal areas in chaos, Nancy awoke to discover that her name had been dragged into an elaborate death hoax, one that claimed not only her life but also the life of her only daughter. The headlines spread like wildfire: General Hospital star dies in Japanese tsunami, tragedy strikes soap legend abroad, and Nancy Lee Grahn and daughter feared dead. These chilling phrases appeared across blogs, gossip websites, clickbait news feeds, and even some minor entertainment publications, causing shockwaves through the entertainment industry and among millions of loyal fans. The speed at which the misinformation propagated was staggering. Within hours, tribute posts flooded social media, hashtags mourning Nancy's alleged death began trending, and forums dedicated to General Hospital were inundated with messages of grief, confusion, and disbelief. Fans posted tearful goodbyes, fellow actors offered condolences, and the show's fanbase collectively entered a state of mourning. But amidst the fabricated sorrow, Nancy was very much alive, shaken. Yes, but very much breathing, alert, and aware of the storm brewing around her name. Realizing the severity of the situation and the emotional toll it was taking on those who cared for her, Nancy quickly took to Instagram, where she shared an image of the false article with a caption dripping in both irony and exhaustion: "I'm back. Another daytime diva rises from the dead. But seriously, this is dangerous. I'm alive. My daughter is alive. Stop spreading lies." Her clarification should have ended the story. But what she revealed next took the already disturbing situation to a far darker place. Nancy did not believe this hoax was an accidental rumor or a piece of random internet fiction. She believed it was intentional, calculated, personal. She went on to state that she had credible reason to believe the death hoax originated not from a misinformed blog post or a misunderstanding, but from someone she knew. A fellow actor. A colleague from the very set where she had worked for decades, General Hospital. According to Nancy, this individual had harbored a long-standing resentment toward her, fueled by professional jealousy, creative disagreements, and a bitter personal history that included backstage arguments and a battle of egos played out subtly and not so subtly over the years. Nancy's bold decision to shine a light on this unnamed figure sent shockwaves through both the fan community and the entertainment press. She claimed that this person had weaponized her vulnerable travel plans, publicly shared with fans just days earlier, to fabricate a tragedy and manipulate public emotion. It wasn't just an attack on her career, Nancy insisted. It was an attack on her identity, her motherhood, and the sacred bond she held with her daughter. Even more chilling, Nancy revealed that the hoax had been executed using sophisticated means. Fake screenshots of supposed Japanese news outlets, falsified emergency alerts in English and Japanese, manipulated timestamps, and even fake witness accounts claiming to have seen her trapped in the rubble. She alleged that these pieces of misinformation were disseminated via a network of anonymous accounts, all tracing back to a common IP source. Cyber investigators hired by her legal team had begun tracking the digital breadcrumbs. What they found, she suggested, was a trail pointing suspiciously close to the professional inner circle she'd once trusted. The revelation was unprecedented. Never before had a daytime television scandal reached such a chilling intersection of real-world danger and virtual betrayal. The fanbase immediately mobilized into amateur sleuths, combing through years of cast interviews, behind-the-scenes gossip, and social media feuds to uncover who the culprit might be. Nancy's reputation as a blunt, politically outspoken, An at times confrontational figure on social media had earned her both staunch allies and passionate critics. She had never shied away from using her platform to call out injustices, both on set and off, and while her moral clarity won her admirers, it also painted a target on her back. Names began to surface. Old grudges were revisited. Archived tweets were dissected for subtext. Rumors from previous years, stories of jealousy, stolen storylines. Heated production meetings were suddenly recast under a new and sinister light. A few co-stars quietly deactivated their accounts. Others made cryptic statements that seemed like indirect denials or anxious deflections. Meanwhile, Nancy maintained a deliberate silence, choosing not to name her suspect publicly until she could present indisputable evidence. She insisted this was not a witch hunt, it was about restoring the truth and ensuring her daughter, who had been traumatized by both the natural disaster and the international hysteria surrounding their supposed deaths, felt protected and vindicated. Beyond the sheer emotional trauma, Nancy's experience highlighted an increasingly dangerous aspect of celebrity in the digital age, the weaponization of false information. Her story became emblematic of how easily the truth can be distorted, how effortlessly digital illusions can mimic reality, and how malicious intent can masquerade as breaking news. For Nancy, the situation was not just an isolated attack, it was a reflection of a broken system, one where social media outrage trumps fact-checking and where a single lie, repeated often enough, begins to take on the shape of reality. Still, in the face of such darkness, Nancy's response remained rooted in integrity. She continued to share images of her time in Japan, not as a tourist flaunting luxury, but as a survivor reclaiming peace. Quiet images of sunrises over Mount Fuji, a tea ceremony with her daughter in Kyoto, the empty yet resilient streets of Tokyo days after the quake. With each post, she reminded the world of her humanity, her resilience, and her refusal to be reduced to a headline. Her daughter, once shielded from the limelight, now appeared beside her, a symbol of everything Nancy fought to protect, not just against a tsunami, but against the waves of hatred that tried to drag her down. As of now, no official confirmation has been released regarding the identity of the saboteur. Yet Nancy's legal team continues to press forward, with subpoenas already issued to social media platforms demanding access to account records. Anonymous informants have reportedly come forward with details that may help identify the culprit. Inside sources suggest that if the full truth comes to light, it may unravel more than just one person's secrets, it may expose a culture of rivalry and toxic competitiveness that has quietly festered behind the glamorous facade of daytime television for years. Nancy Lee Grahn has survived both the fury of nature and the cruelty of deception. Her journey through chaos, both geological and psychological, has transformed her public image from television legend to symbol of tenacity in the face of digitally fueled destruction. And though the final chapter of this bizarre and unsettling saga is still unwritten, one thing is clear, she refuses to be erased, manipulated, or broken. In a world increasingly distorted by rumor and noise, Nancy's voice remains, defiant, grounded, and heard. Even as the waves of panic receded and public discourse gradually began to settle, Nancy Lee Grahn stood immovable in her commitment to justice and truth, refusing to let the vile fabrications surrounding her name fade quietly into the background. For her, this wasn't simply about correcting misinformation. This was about restoring dignity, reclaiming safety, and ensuring that no one, especially not someone who hides behind a veil of anonymity, could so maliciously hijack reality and weaponize public sympathy for personal vendettas. The aftermath of the false death report was, in Nancy's words, more than a digital smear, it was an emotional ambush designed to break the trust she had spent her entire career building. And that trust wasn't just between her and her audience, it was a covenant between truth and storytelling, between performer and public, between mother and daughter, between a woman's legacy and her right to protect it. Nancy made it clear that silence was not an option. In her decades-long career, she had never shied away from difficult conversations. She had never cowered in the face of controversy. She had stood tall through on-set disputes, online backlash, and even personal hardships that most celebrities chose to keep hidden. But this orchestrated attempt to declare her and her daughter dead, was an act that demanded more than resilience. It demanded reckoning. And Nancy, knowing the gravity of what had been done, responded not with fury but with focus. She announced publicly that she had already begun working alongside a legal team specializing in defamation and cybercrimes. Not only to uncover who was responsible, but to ensure they would be held accountable before the law. Behind the scenes, her attorneys began compiling data from social media platforms, requesting subpoenas to access account activity logs, metadata, and IP routing information. Meanwhile, a private cybersecurity firm began a forensic analysis of the false news reports, tracking how and where the articles originated, which websites published them, and what patterns linked the activity to specific anonymous accounts. Nancy didn't want vague accusations. She wanted facts, irrefutable evidence, a name, something concrete that would stand up not only in court, but in the court of public opinion. Because while the truth might eventually surface on its own, she had no intention of waiting. She would drag it out, inch by inch if necessary. Parallel to this determined legal pursuit, Nancy continued to express profound gratitude to the fans and followers who had stood by her through what she described as the most surreal crisis of her life. In multiple posts and media interviews, she emphasized how deeply moved she had been by the outpouring of support, not only the disbelief at the initial hoax, but the quiet, steady strength of the community that refused to accept such a grotesque lie. She acknowledged that in an age where misinformation spreads faster than facts, it's easy to fall into the trap of fear and sensationalism. And yet, so many of her fans had paused, questioned, investigated, and ultimately chosen faith over frenzy. That kind of loyalty, she said, wasn't just admirable, it was life-affirming. She was especially vocal about the role her daughter had played throughout this ordeal, in what she described as the darkest, most disorienting moments of her life. It was her daughter's poise and emotional intelligence that kept her grounded. During the earthquake, her daughter took immediate charge, calmly reviewing evacuation protocols, reassuring frightened tourists nearby, and ensuring her mother was safe from falling debris or structural collapse. Nancy recounted in vivid detail how the two of them sat shoulder to shoulder in their Tokyo hotel's emergency stairwell for hours, holding each other's hands, listening to the building groan under the strain of seismic aftershocks. They stayed awake through the night, monitoring emergency broadcasts, scrolling through Japanese civil alert apps, and waiting for confirmation that tsunami threats had passed. And once the danger abated, they remained emotionally bonded, navigating the emotional aftershocks as tightly as they had the physical ones. But the emotional assault didn't end with the quake. In many ways, it had only begun. Upon returning to the United States, the fabricated reports of her death began to gain traction, sending both Nancy and her daughter into another kind of survival mode. This time, the enemy wasn't tectonic, it was digital. Her daughter, once again, became a pillar of strength. Nancy described how her daughter read through hundreds of social media posts, flagged disinformation for reporting, contacted blog editors to request retractions, and even fielded calls from concerned friends and distant family members who had seen the false reports and were too distraught to confirm the truth on their own. More than anything, Nancy expressed how this ordeal reshaped her understanding of motherhood. She said it was easy to think of herself as the protector, the guide, the shield, but in those terrifying days, she realized her daughter had become all of those things for her. And that revelation was perhaps the most powerful source of her current resolve. This wasn't just about defending a reputation. It was about defending the truth for her daughter, who had watched her mother be erased in real time by a lie so large and vicious it could have permanently scarred both their lives. Nancy vowed never to allow that erasure to stand. She would expose the lie, no matter how long it took, and ensure the world saw who had tried to weaponize grief. She also took the opportunity to reflect more broadly on the digital culture that enabled such acts. In interviews and statements, Nancy lamented how easily the lines between truth and fiction had become blurred in the age of algorithm-driven virality. She spoke candidly about how platforms incentivize outrage and sensation, often rewarding those who craft the most shocking narratives regardless of their veracity. The hoax about her death had likely earned someone revenue, views, clicks, engagement, but at what cost? How many people wept for no reason? How many children had to explain to their parents that a beloved actress was, in fact, alive? How many moments of panic could have been avoided if a single person had paused to verify the source? Nancy's voice became a clarion call against such carelessness. She emphasized the need for digital responsibility, for media literacy, for ethical publishing, and for consequences when those standards are violated. And while she admitted that she couldn't fix the entire internet, she could start here, with herself, with her case, with her truth. She hoped her experience would become a watershed moment. A cautionary tale that would make future hoaxers think twice before weaponizing fiction for fun or vengeance. As the investigation into the source of the hoax progresses, Nancy continues to share fragments of her healing process, not as curated content, but as living testimony. She posts updates not just on the legal front, but on her emotional recovery. A sunrise walk with her daughter along the California coast, a framed photo of the Tokyo skyline she refuses to take down, a passage from a book about resilience highlighted in yellow ink. Each one is a subtle defiance, a declaration that she is still here, still breathing, still fighting. And with every step she takes, she walks not only for herself but for all those who have ever been diminished, misrepresented, or silenced. For every mother who has felt powerless. For every daughter who has had to grow up too fast in the face of crisis. For every voice that has been drowned out by noise. Nancy Lee Grahn is no longer merely a soap opera icon. She is, now more than ever, a symbol of enduring strength in the face of a world that too often confuses drama with cruelty, and spectacle with truth. Her story is still unfolding. But one thing remains certain, she will not rest until the real villain of this tale is unmasked. And when that moment comes, it won't be for vengeance, it will be for justice, for healing, and for the sanctity of the truth. The fabricated death hoax surrounding Nancy Lee Grahn was far more than just a tasteless prank, it was a chilling demonstration of how deeply false information can cut in the digital age. In a world where a single click can ignite chaos, where the line between truth and fabrication is blurred by algorithms and viral content, the incident served as a sobering reminder of how dangerously vulnerable public figures have become. It was not merely a cruel attempt to steal attention, it was an attack on identity, on legacy, and on the fragile equilibrium that exists between celebrity and humanity. Nancy, a woman whose name has been synonymous with integrity and talent for decades, was thrust into a storm of collective grief built on lies, a narrative authored by unseen hands with motives still cloaked in silence. This wasn't just about her, it was a warning to every individual who lives part of their life in the public eye. It exposed the terrifying reality that in the age of misinformation, lives can be shattered not by bullets or betrayal, but by bandwidth and bandwidth alone. The incident underscored the urgent need for societal reckoning regarding how we engage with digital content. What happened to Nancy could have happened to anyone. Her years of hard-earned reputation, the love and trust of her fans, her role as a mother and as a respected actress, all of it was nearly swept away by a faceless whisper across the internet. The emotional damage inflicted upon her, her daughter, and those who mourned her prematurely, cannot be quantified in retweets or engagement statistics. And yet, the people responsible remain hidden, shielded by the anonymity that modern platforms enable. Where accountability is often a distant afterthought and the hunger for clicks eclipses basic human decency. But Nancy Lee Grahn did not crumble under the weight of deceit. She emerged, shaken, yes, but sharpened by adversity. With fierce determination and renewed clarity, she has returned to the public sphere with more strength than ever before. No longer content to be a silent victim, Nancy has chosen instead to become a vanguard in the fight against digital slander, standing tall as a beacon of truth amid the static. She is not just pushing back against a single lie. She is confronting an entire culture that allows cruelty to thrive under the guise of news and personal vendettas to masquerade as anonymous commentary. Her decision to pursue the source of the false report through legal and technological means is not just about justice for herself, it is a signal to others in the entertainment industry and beyond that. The days of letting this kind of abuse go unanswered are over. While the identity of the perpetrator remains unknown, the ongoing investigation continues to gather momentum. The silence of those who may be responsible, or who may know more than they've admitted, only adds to the tension. Speculation simmers across online forums, social media threads, and fan communities who have taken on the mantle of amateur sleuths, hoping to unmask the figure behind the digital curtain. But amid the uncertainty, one fact remains indisputable. Nancy Lee Grahn is not waiting to be rescued by justice, she is hunting for it. She is using every resource available, not just to uncover the person who tried to erase her, but to shine a harsh light on the systemic failures that allowed this event to happen in the first place. What makes Nancy's response so compelling is that it is rooted not in rage, but in responsibility. She has refused to sink to the level of those who sought to harm her. Instead, she has chosen the higher road, one paved with evidence, advocacy, and an unyielding commitment to truth. In her public statements, there is no hysteria, only resolve. In her social media posts, there is no bitterness, only clarity. She has become, in many ways, the embodiment of what it means to survive modern fame with dignity intact. Her actions are not driven by revenge, but by a profound sense of duty, to herself, to her daughter, to her fans, and to the greater good. Nancy's case is now being viewed by many in the industry as a potential turning point. It has prompted urgent conversations about digital ethics, about the role of media platforms in preventing the spread of harmful falsehoods, and about how institutions must evolve to protect the mental health and reputations of public figures. Producers, fellow actors, and public relations professionals have quietly expressed support, recognizing that her bravery in speaking out may ultimately lead to new standards and safeguards within the entertainment industry. For too long, the fast-paced, click-driven economy of online journalism has been allowed to sacrifice accuracy for immediacy, accountability for attention. Nancy's fight is, in essence, a battle for a future where those values are no longer optional. For her fans, Nancy's resurgence has become a rallying cry. Across platforms, messages of solidarity continue to pour in. From longtime soap opera enthusiasts who have followed her since the early days of her career, to younger generations discovering her story for the first time, the support is universal and unwavering. They see in her not just a talented actress, but a woman of principle, standing firm in a world that often rewards the opposite. They recognize that she is not just surviving adversity, she is transforming it into momentum. Her pain has become purpose. Her disruption, a declaration. And so, even as questions remain and the case unfolds, Nancy Lee Grahn stands unshaken at the center of the storm. She has proven that character is not measured by popularity, but by the courage to protect one's name when others try to tear it down. She has shown that silence is not always noble, that sometimes the most powerful thing one can do is speak up, not only for oneself, but for every voice that might otherwise be lost to noise. In the glamorous, glittering facade of the entertainment world, so often designed to hide the cracks beneath the surface, Nancy is peeling back the layers and exposing the shadows. Not to destroy, but to rebuild. To redefine what strength looks like in an age where even the truth can be hacked, reshaped, and sold for profit. Nancy Lee Grahn has returned, not merely to act, but to act decisively. Her journey is not over, but one thing is clear, she will not be written off by a lie. She is, and will remain, a living testament to the idea that courage, truth, and resilience are louder than even the most calculated conspiracy. She has weathered the storm, both literal and figurative, and emerged not washed away, but forged anew, like steel in fire. And with the unwavering trust of her supporters behind her. She is now more than a survivor, she is a symbol of what it means to confront darkness with light and walk through the wreckage with your head held high.